This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Laurie Campbell is very passionate about improving financial literacy. When I saw her speak at the Financial Wellness and Retirement Readiness Conference in February of 2018, I was impressed by her devotion to helping people solve debt problems. Getting out of debt is hard and involves a lot of sacrifice. But for some people, it's even harder to not get into debt in the first place. There are people like myself who had mental health and addiction issues in the past, and that led to an overwhelming amount of debt. This is very hard to avoid, but as Laurie and I discussed in the interview, you can get out sooner if you reach out for help early. The problem is that there's still so much stigma, shame, and embarrassment surrounding consumer debt, and people feel that they need to keep it to themselves and fix it on their own. What happens is that their consumer debt gets larger, and by the time people end up at Laurie's office, they're in big trouble. But as Laurie has found out in her 25 years at Credit Canada, it's never too late to make the changes to your life that are needed to get yourself out of debt and on the right track. I visited Laurie at her office in Toronto to learn about her personal finance story and how she ended up as CEO of Credit Canada, a Canadian registered charity dedicated to helping Canadians overcome debt problems and improve their personal money management skills.
Parents that were very frugal with money, very good with money, which is excellent. My mother more so than my father, only out of fear more than anything else. So that is its own issues as well.
Like fear of scarcity?
She grew up with scarcity.
Okay,
so when she was raising us, 4 girls, she passed that on or continued to try to live that lifestyle when she really didn't have to. My father was a college teacher and he taught accounting.
Okay, oh wow.
So,
nice.
His background was very solid. He was very good with numbers, and I think that all of us picked that up. But the practicality of money really came from my mother to a certain degree. Except for one, if you talk about an incident that kind of formed your attitude about money. I remember when I was young, I was probably like at 10, 12, I don't know how old. My mother had heard from her friend in Toronto at the time, because we were from Sault Ste. Marie, that pennies and copper were going to become scarce.
Oh.
Why? I don't know. She thought copper was going to become scarce.
And what year would this have been?
I would have to say it would have been the early 70s, for some reason.
And it wasn't just because they were going to be discontinued like they have been recently.
It wasn't discontinuation.
Due to they won't be able to make them
mining
anymore.
Or some shortage of copper for some crazy
That's right.
reason.
Sudbury is going out of business.
Yes, exactly. There'll be no more copper in the world. And so my mother thought, well, you know what? This is a way to make a lot of money. Apparently, if copper is going to become scarce, then the value of the penny was going to double or triple. Who knows, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So she went around to many banks in Sault Ste. Marie, and there are not that many banks in Sault Ste. Marie, and bought up as many pennies as she could.
Okay.
So I recall my father lugging these pennies from the trunk of the car into the basement. And, we're talking like handfuls and handfuls, and bagfuls of pennies. And my mother had this stash in the basement of all these pennies.
And it obviously didn't cost her that much.
Cost her a penny for each penny.
Penny for each penny.
Right.
And
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many there were? Like, did you guys ever
thousands.
count them?
Thousands of pennies.
Thousands of pennies.
Who knew dollar amount? I mean, it would have been hundreds of dollars, I'm assuming.
Sure, so hundreds of
dollars. Since she
dollars.
was going to cash in, right?
And then did anything happen at all?
Well, as we all know,
I don't
the penny is
remember
still
anything.
worth a penny, not even worth anything.
It's not worth anything, but so copper didn't skyrocket.
Copper didn't skyrocket, so I remember my father dragging those pennies up the stairs and out the door.
Dumping them in a machine somewhere.
Exactly.
If they ever even took
they
those.
were already rolled, so it was perfect.
They rolled right up.
But, and that formed a memory of, if something seems too good to be true, and let's face it, if pennies were that easy of a hit to take value and double and triple, then it's not true. And I think that kind of a mentality, I think it taught my mother a lesson as well, but that kind of mentality kind of stayed with me through life, that you have to be a savvy investor, but you have to understand that you're not going to make money hand over fist.
Yeah.
Just on a whim or hearsay.
Yeah, advertising kind of gets us, right? Or
Exactly.
just everybody just talks about their wins.
Exactly. In word of mouth, we talk about, what stock is doing well today, and everyone runs out and buys it. And I think about my mother back then, hearing from a friend, copper's going to be worth a lot, go out and buy a bunch of pennies.
Yeah.
It didn't work out so well.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, we were at there's a LinkedIn meetup, and one of the speakers talked about how he heard somebody told him silver was the thing, 10 years ago or something like that. And he just went on. He actually bought a bunch of bars of silver, and they're still in his parents' basement.
Lovely.
Yeah,
exactly.
What are you going to do with that, right?
Exactly.
So you were around how old when this was all
Well, I would
happening?
say I was probably around 12, 14 years old at the time.
Nice.
And so at that time, I was just starting to earn my own money through babysitting, through newspapers, and I very quickly after that, I got my first job at Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons, nice.
Yeah, I was a Tim Hortons girl.
So you're one of the, I talk about this in every interview apparently. Everybody worked retail except for me, or in terms of fast food,
yes.
or some kind of customer service. And so what was your experience like at Tim Hortons?
Well, my experience at Tim Hortons is, first of all, because Sault Ste. Marie's a border town, a lot of people pay for their coffee with American money.
Sure.
And I was at least smart enough to know because they paid on par. They didn't, so I'd transfer my Canadian money over to get the American money. The owners didn't seem to mind.
There was no rules?
There were no rules. And so that was one little lesson in money management there. And obviously, a paycheck does not go very far when you have a lot of wants and don't understand the difference between needs and wants. So I learned very quickly that after, a couple of pays that, I don't really have anything to show for all that hard work unless I actually put money away.
Yeah, so then you did. So did you come up with some kind of plan or just whatever you had?
What I did at that time, my mother was always very, you've got to put at least 50% of your money into the bank account. Yeah, and 50% you can spend. Yeah. And that seemed reasonable. It's not like today where, I had any other expenses.
After your rent is paid. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't have to pay rent back then or a mortgage or anything like that. So it was very easy just to put 50% away. And, it was a good lesson. I've always been someone who puts money away, no matter how much I'm paid, so that I feel that I've got that cushion. And that's one thing my mother instilled in me, is that, you've got to put away for a rainy day. And I'm not sure that lesson's in our modern society anymore, because so many people think that their rainy day cushion is their credit card.
Or that the rainy day will never happen.
Exactly,
right?
that rainy day.
And, and if it does, I'll be fine. Not realizing that, this is a big button for me, right? Not realizing that when you use the credit card to fix your problems, you got more problems now.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because maybe it's not going to fix all your problems. And now you also have an additional problem of debt, right?
Exactly.
And I've been through a proposal. I had Doug Hoyes on, and I went back in 2008, I think.
Right.
I think 8 or 9. I always get it mixed up, but I went through a proposal with Doug because I had a gambling addiction, right?
Right.
A pretty long gambling addiction.
Yeah, we see a lot of that here.
Yeah, exactly. And Doug would say the same thing, and. It all comes down to the conference that we were at, wellness, right? Financial wellness as well as mental health. It's all connected, right? And
so much of it is connected. And, a lot of, unfortunately, and I'm so glad that you're open about it, because a lot of people aren't. And I think that wellness impacts so many different areas of our life. And mental health issues impact so many financial issues. And we see this over and over again here at Credit Canada, where people, and I don't look at my mother, and I think she had a mental health issue when it came to her mentality around scarcity.
So like a little bit of paranoia?
Severe paranoia.
Yeah, sure.
Even now she still has it.
Yeah.
And, this is something I think that because of her upbringing, it caused some really serious mental health issues. And perhaps issues of fear of scarcity because of what she saw.
Just the stuff it's not actually, there's no evidence of any of it. It's not real, right? It's just like the extreme saver issue, right? It's like,
exactly.
Okay, you're doing good, but now you're not living your life.
You're not living your life, and you're denying yourself basic needs. And I'm not talking about wants. I'm talking about some basic needs. I mean, there was some incident recently with my mother, and I'm like, Mom, you need to spend the money on this. And she was like, I just worry about running out. And it was it was like a $20 hit.
Wow.
But that's how it's become, that she's got this sort of unrealistic fear.
These extremes, they can be a bit harmful, because your mother is the saver one, and the other side is the extreme spender, who is never going to get sick and is never going to have a rainy day and never needs a fund. Always going to be fine.
And there's a certain element of denial in that, right?
So much.
That I'm not going to even worry about tomorrow. I'm going to deny that anything bad is going to happen. I'm going to deny that life does take hits.
Yeah. or it's never going to happen to me.
It's never going to happen to me.
I see it. I know it's happened to everybody else that I know.
Exactly.
It's almost like everybody has to go through some sort of little thing to wake them up, right? I would never wish an addiction on anyone.
No.
But it did give me some perspective. And
compassion, probably.
Compassion, yeah. And it's funny how that sometimes seems fleeting too, right? You watch a television show and you think, oh, that person should just snap out of it. And then you think, wait a minute, I was in that.
Yes.
How can I even think or say something like that? It's because we're somehow trained to think that people can just get over these things unless we've been through them. And even then, we have short memory.
We do have short memories. And I also think it's because TV also tells us that things get cleaned up and put into a nice, neat package
into
in
21
an hour,
minutes.
21 minutes. And when you're right, I think it's so, we hear about it with people that comment about our clients coming in to see us. Well, they got themselves into difficulty, so that's their fault. And it's so much more complicated and complex than that.
Yeah.
And there's so many layers. It could be an addiction issue. It could be a mental health problem. It could be a job loss. It could be some type of severe situation in their family. You don't know. There's so many stories underneath what you see in someone's life.
I've been quoting something you said at the conference in February lately, because I had it written down, that the number one cause of bankruptcy is mismanagement. Did I get that right?
Exactly.
And that's frustrating to me because mismanagement is avoidable. Right. What we're talking about with the wellness and mental health leading to addiction, to money problems or vice versa. These are problems that we get into. Maybe we didn't see them coming. Mismanagement is something that we can be a little bit proactive about.
We can, and if we can catch it at that level. But I think for a lot of people, mismanagement happens because of other things that are going on with their life.
Because of the other things, yeah.
And often people don't want to focus on finance. We're told we're really not taught to talk about money.
Yeah.
Don't talk about money. That's taboo. That's not nice talk. I remember when my son was very young, I was trying to teach him about money, and I was saying, look, he's probably 8 or 9, and he asked how much I made, and I said, well, I'm going to tell you how much I make, but I want you to go to the store with me and look at groceries, and we're talking about things like that. Of course, 8 or 9, he's really too young to understand this. Sure. I swear to God, I had not even got it out of my mouth, and he was running across the street telling everyone. Just asking his friend, my mom makes this much. How much does your mom make?
And we don't do that.
And that to me was
Why
like,
not?
oh my gosh. But we don't do that. And I think that we haven't been open enough about money and talking about it and exploring how we can actually learn from each other.
Yeah, if we could just say, like, understand that this person makes this and that person makes that. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't have been much of a surprise, depending on whatever role you were in at the time.
Probably not at all.
But it's still something that is so private and personal.
Yeah.
So how did you learn about money like that, like officially? Like what did you go to school for?
I went to school. My education, my background is psychology and business.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a perfect
good
mix
combo
when
for
you
this.
think about
Yeah,
it, right?
exactly.
It's a perfect mix. You have to understand the and money is very there is a psychology around money, but you have to put your business mind. And I think that I get that from my father, and be practical when it comes to your finances as well. So I think it was a perfect combination, especially coming in here when we understand that there is always an underlying cause to financial mismanagement.
That's right.
Always.
If you started with the blame game or anything like that, or just you made a mistake, this stuff is not helpful at all.
No, and people don't. They don't react to that, right?
Yeah, so psychology is like it's more important. This is the business that you're in, right?
Yeah, it's life.
Yeah,
really, it's the life of money.
Yeah,
and I think that if you can get down to that it's all about how fluid your relationship with money becomes. And there was a book called My Money Myself, and I thought it was a fascinating book. It was written many, many years ago by this lady about her relationship with money and how your childhood upbringing impacts how you manage money, your relationships with other people, your self-esteem, obviously addictions and mental health issues, your environment, and everything else. And if you can develop at any stage of life a better relationship with money. And that's the good news that we try to instill with our clients, is that maybe it was mismanagement, maybe it was really not having a full understanding of how to manage your money, but anybody can improve their relationship with money.
You can get out.
Absolutely.
That's the hardest thing to understand, right? When I was $40,000 in debt and making $40,000 a year, I think maybe even at that time it might have been less, and thinking, well, I would think I'm gonna have to move in with my parents and
Yes.
live, move back to Timmins and live in the basement or something.
Yes.
I didn't really think there was a future for me, and I don't know what caused me to reach out to Hoyes Michaelos. You were probably around at the time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably.
But,
Yes, we were for sure. 50 years.
I don't know. I think maybe it was just the luck of the draw sort of thing. I called. I sent them a note or found the resources. I realized I needed to do this. I needed to do a proposal. There was no way I was going to get out of this.
Right.
Another thing from the LinkedIn meetup last week, he was talking about credit card statement he carried around in his pocket.
Right.
And it said something like, in fine print, it says how long it's going to take you to pay
Get out
off
of debt.
with the minimum payment.
Right.
And why do they even put it at all? If they're
I
not
know,
going to put it
and they've
big?
got it in fine print at the very bottom of the last page.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it was 79 years or something
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
It's insane.
And I kind of had that realization that I was paying. I had it was all credit cards, right? So all high.
High interest. You'd never get out of that.
I think it was $1,000 a month,
Right.
Like in minimums.
Interest. Yeah. Oh, and the minimum payments.
Yeah, minimum payments.
Yeah, and and 800 is going towards interest.
It's not
or something
pushing
like that.
it anywhere. Yeah, it's not pushing the principal at all. And I was like, there's no way out of this. I'll try to make more money and I'll try to get another job, but that's going to take some time. In the meantime, I'm drowning in interest.
You have to move forward, right?
Yeah.
And the only way you can move forward was, and that's the thing that we hear all the time is that people say that they've been sitting on their financial problem for many years. And I'm sure you felt that way at that time as well.
Absolutely.
Sitting on and not getting anywhere. And by the time they've come to see us and we've been able to counsel them and move them forward, they at least can sleep at night. They feel like, they can pay off the principal amount at the very least. In your case, do a consumer proposal where something's going back to the creditors, but they're moving forward. And
There's a plan.
It's with a plan.
Yeah.
And so many people wait, I think, too long to get help.
Yeah.
Wait
because
way
of
too
the
long.
stigma, right?
The stigma. And also a bit of the denial that, things will be better next month, or maybe I'll win the lottery.
Or this is how everybody lives.
This is how everybody
right?
lives.
So they don't feel like they
because
need to do
nobody
anything
talks.
about it. Yeah.
So you don't know.
Yeah, if you had to share your credit card bill on a monthly, or at least accountability with somebody, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your history with credit cards? Did did they give you one right out of university too?
Well, no, I had one. So I was in second or third year university, and I remember it was one Christmas. And I was broke. I got to say, I was broke.
Did you pay for school yourself, or how did it work?
I had student loans, and I did get some help from my parents, but a lot of it was me. I didn't want to go back to my parents for anything else,
Sure.
and so I felt like I was really tight. And quite frankly, I didn't do well that 1 year with student loans. I mean, I spent too much money too early on, and then
this is how we learn our lessons, right?
Yeah. So it was one Christmas, and I was really broke, and I thought, man, I have no money for Christmas presents at all. And lo and behold, I walked through a big retail department store.
There you
go.
And
they were offering credit cards.
Ooh.
And I thought, oh, man.
29% interest.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
It's like ridiculous interest rate.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was only a $300 limit. But that was a lot of money to me because I didn't have any.
Well, enough for presents.
Exactly, enough for presents. So I got that credit card, bought people presents, went home, had a great Christmas, and afterwards I realized like I owed $297 on the bay. And to me, because don't forget my mother being fear factor number one, my dad being the responsible businessman number two, I was like, oh my God, I could never tell my parents, they're going to freak.
Wow.
And it took me about 6 months to pay it off.
Whoa.
I got a really good job waitressing, which was a total slam dunk for me in the market in Ottawa.
In terms of like tips and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Because I went to school in Ottawa. And
nice.
You know what? I never, ever viewed credit cards the same way again.
So you had that early
experience. That
one
little early thing scared me, and it was very inconsequential for most people. But for me, it doesn't matter how much debt you're in, it's how you feel about that debt.
Yeah.
Right?
And so you probably paid a little bit of interest.
I paid some interest.
I
did.
That $300.
Yeah, and it was a large percentage
interest.
I mean, it's the highest percentage of any credit card out there, retail cards. So, I paid quite a bit of interest because I didn't pay it off right away. And back then, $10 was a lot of money to me. I had no money.
Yeah.
And so if I'm paid 20, bucks interest or whatever it is every month, that would have been like a small sum.
That's a good point
for me.
That you made, though, about how you feel about it, because people are like, oh, just go into a little bit of debt. You know, what does it matter? Or like, because I'm kind of debt adverse.
Now you are. Exactly. Your whole mentality's changed, right?
Even though I understand the value of leveraging certain things and of course mortgages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I have no desire to just jump right into something without, you know, if it's a mortgage and that's the decision that we made and it's the home that we want.
Exactly.
Fine. That's a debt that I will have to live with. But if I
good debt versus bad debt.
Yeah, we could have that conversation, and of course it's only good debt if you don't buy more house
then you can afford, and
right?
you know, you didn't buy a year ago.
Exactly. Right, timing and it's everything, but timing should only matter if I can only afford this if the interest rates stay the same.
I know. And you know, if there aren't any other expenses that come into your life, a lot of people think, oh, well, then we had children, that's an extra cost, or we didn't think about the fact that you know, that my job fluctuates, you know, as far as income goes. There's so many factors that you have to think about.
So much of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't want debt at all. So
I totally
if somebody's like, oh yeah, just put it, you know, here, just put that $500 on there, and I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not going to buy anything unless I can afford it. Just because I have a huge credit card limit doesn't mean I'm ever going to use it.
Exactly.
It's there for my credit report and for people to see. Look, people gave me credit.
Yeah, I'm credit
I'll be able to get a mortgage.
Exactly.
What do you mean there was a gap? No one knows about this proposal anymore.
That's right.
It's actually it's funny. We did try to buy we did try to buy a house. We didn't succeed.
Put an offer in.
Put an offer in, and of course we had to qualify for something before, you know, just so we would know.
Right.
My wife's credit rating was good, and mine was good, except that when you look, it was only like less than a year after my proposal cleared from the credit report.
So it's kind of a blank
they had this.
hole.
They're like, there's nothing there.
Yes.
But what was there?
Right.
And so apparently, another year or two would give them. Because I mean, our credit rating is amazing now because I don't have any debt and everything's cleared off, and it's really nice to be able to start over and also rebuild while I was doing it. Unless you're doing that, it's not that important unless you're doing the mortgage thing.
Unless you're doing, that's what people don't seem to understand. You know, a lot of people think they need 5 or 6 credit cards to build up their credit rating. You need one. Really, truly, you need one with some history.
Sure.
And history takes a couple of years. That's it. You know, so like you say, you know, it takes a couple of years from the, you know, you have this blank hole after that, before that. But other than that, it's only going to take you a few years.
Pay it off
and then, you know, I mean, maybe it's a good thing that you didn't buy a house because the market probably is going to improve even more for buyers.
And my wife got into medical school.
Oh,
so and
perfect.
And we moved to Hamilton. So
yeah,
you know, it's a bit of
the market's even better there.
So it all kind of works out. But yeah, so you paid that credit card off.
So I paid that credit card off,
and now you're finishing university.
University.
Working. You're hustling as a waitress.
I hustled as a waitress all through university.
So it helped pay for costs.
You know what? I tell you, that was one good gig. If I could say anything to young people, if you can get a job waiting tables while you're in school at a trendy restaurant. I mean, I worked in the market in Ottawa. It was trendy. I made great tips. It paid for my last 2 years of university by myself. I didn't get any money from anybody. I didn't have student loans the last 2 years. I didn't borrow. I didn't ask my dad for money.
Great.
I mean, my father's like, "You sure you don't want anything?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. I really don't."
Well, how many nights a week did you work?
I worked about 3 nights a week. Okay. But I worked good 8 hours, and you know, I worked the popular nights, and got the big
holidays,
tips.
St. Patty's Day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, you know, it was a Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night I worked, and those were the big tip that carried me through the rest of the week.
My brother and I used to play in a duo. We played Irish pubs or pubs, right? So we when we would go to Ottawa, we'd be on the weekends when I was in university. Yes. And we would play the Rose and Crown.
Of course,
and Darcy McGee's. Oh. And then over in Nepean, Grace O'Malley's.
Oh, okay,
yeah, which I don't know if that's still there, but I'm sure the Rose and Crown and Darcy McGee's are still there.
Probably.
And so we would have to play 3 nights to make the Ottawa trip worth it, right? So I know how it can get, especially on holidays.
Oh, exactly.
In the market and on Spark Street too, absolutely. But so you made it out, and then what?
So I worked.
You got psychology and business. What did you want to do?
Well, I didn't know. Like everybody else, I didn't have any clue what I wanted to do. Sure. I went abroad for a bit, and then I came back, and I worked in Ottawa. I worked for a charity called Friends of the Environment. It was called Friends of the Earth back then, and enjoyed the charitable world, and then came to Toronto, did some work here with CIBC and the like, and then landed at Credit Canada. But I have to tell you, because this agency's been around for 50 years, so that was quite some time ago that I've been here. But I remember being interviewed for the job, and I thought, they're not going to like me because I actually have a credit card. I didn't know anything on it. I was
taboo.
Really good, but I thought maybe it's taboo to even work for an agency that's all about managing
That's
credit.
Funny, eh?
But I quickly learned it's not about not having credit. It's about managing it. It's about being responsible for it, and actually having the credit card work for you rather than you work for the bank.
That's right.
You know what I mean? If you're
you can make money off of credit card companies if you use it correctly.
Yeah, have no annual fee.
Yeah.
If you can, if you don't want points, have no annual fee. If you want points, then
But I got one with cash back and no annual fee.
Yeah, so perfect.
There's
wonderful.
so many options now.
Yeah.
Because if you know you're never going to pay it off, you're always going to pay it off.
Then put your groceries on.
Yeah, then you don't have to care about the interest rate.
You don't have to care. The interest rate could be 100%.
Take the high interest rate for the no fee and cash back, and now you're making money.
Exactly.
You just have to be responsible with it, right?
Exactly.
You can't. It's like I'm sure we all break at some point, but it's hard not to.
You know
right?
what? It becomes habit as long as you learn. For me, I don't ever. I mean, the way I use credit now is just an innate sort of thing. It becomes habit about how you use it. And I'm sure you're learning that as well.
Absolutely.
That you can have bad habits, you can have good habits, and just if you can get out of the bad habits, and habits are something that you just need to spend time getting away from. If you can get out of those bad habits and use the good habits, then use a credit card. You can use that credit card for almost everyday purchase as long as you know you're going to pay it off at the end of the month, or when on the due date, or daily. I paid mine every time I use it, but sometimes then I can collect points and stuff like that.
Sometimes I make payments before the transaction goes through, and maybe it's a U.S. transaction, and they just had an estimated rate, and then it doesn't match, and I'm like, I should have waited.
Yeah.
Right? Because now I owe like $1.75 or something.
Right. The beauty of online, though, right? The beauty of online is you can pay anything at any time.
And especially if you bank with the same place as a credit card, it's just a money transfer for me. It's not even a bill payment, so it's free. I could actually make a payment. They probably wouldn't like it very much, but I can make a payment for every single transaction if I want.
Yes, you could. You absolutely could.
And the accounting would be a nightmare, but credit cards are not bad.
They're not bad. You
just have to be careful.
You have to be careful. Any type of credit's really not bad. I mean, there was a story today CBC had about this poor lady that this is a warning for everybody, that had a joint line of credit with one of her, with her ex, with her husband at the time. Yeah. He racked it up to $37,000. He told her it had been paid off. They divorced. She stuck with the bill because it was joint. The limit was only $15,000, but they kept increasing the limit because it's a line of credit. It's not like a credit card where you have to apply.
That's a pet peeve of mine, for
yes,
sure.
Exactly. So,
I had a $19,000 CIBC Visa. I was making $40,000 a year.
Yes, exactly.
How
so
will
insane.
I ever need that? There should be, now, we can talk pie in the sky ideas here, but there should be a credit limit based on your salary.
Oh, I agree. There should be a credit. Yeah,
percentage, right?
Exactly. Just to safeguard us from ourselves.
Right.
Because sometimes
just
you think,
reasonability.
because if the problem is many people think if the bank is lending it to me, then I must be able to afford it.
I know.
And that is not true. It's just like with a house. We talk about being house poor. Well, if the bank says I qualify for $1 million, I should be able to buy something for $1 million. No.
Who taught us these lessons, though? The banks.
We didn't get the banks. The banks have actually taught us. We haven't been taught in school.
We've been bamboozled.
We haven't been taught by our parents because parents don't like to talk about money. You think about it.
It's like
who's taught us?
It's like if we learned how to buy a car from a car salesman.
It's
like we're gonna this is what you do, and then you go in, just accept whatever they say.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're going to tell you because they must know. They're the car salesman. They must know.
But that's what happened.
Exactly.
With the banks. Why I had in my mind for so long the banks are there to look out for me, and then when I actually reached out to them for help, I realized so immediately that they were not interested. And it's not our fault. It's not our responsibility to control your spending.
Right. They they take no responsibility, which is unfortunate. I mean, when you hear about banks where some of the reps are actually pushing products on people that they know they can't afford them, just because every time they push a product, let's say a line of credit or whatever, they get points or it improves their opportunity for a bonus.
Get to keep their job.
To keep their job
basically.
And bonus.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a perverse incentive.
It is, and it's just more clear today. Like, it was always like this in one way or another. they're there to make money. I mean, if you buy bank stocks 20 years ago, you're laughing.
Right.
We couldn't have told you that, and
No,
I
I
wouldn't
know.
tell anybody to do it now.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, put all your money in bank stocks. I'm sure you could buy a little bit of banks. I own a little bit of the banks.
Everyone does.
It's like everybody's a hypocrite, right? I'm a hypocrite because
you want your bank stocks to do well.
I want my bank stocks to do well because I know that they have this model that's terrible.
Yes.
And I'm really starting to feel like I'm investing in cigarette companies.
Well,
that's how it feels
I
right
understand. It is a frustrating situation, and it's like you don't know what to do because where are you going to get a good return?
Yeah.
With your money. Marijuana, maybe now, but that's even questionable because that seems to be going all over the place. So it's the blue chip stocks that you rely on, and bank stocks are blue chip stocks. So you can get some and reasonable return on.
What we try to promote is safe investments. There's nothing that's guaranteed, but there are investments that are safer, right? And I would never say put everything into stocks by themselves, or definitely not in one stock or anything, but a little bit of diversity. Is not bad, and banks are a safe place.
They are a safe place because no matter how much Trump and fights with China, chances are our bank stocks are not going to be hit nearly as much as some of the other stocks that we're seeing.
And people
right
seem
now.
to always need somewhere to put their money, and even though there's many alternatives.
Real estate.
I've realized, exactly.
Real estate is really, if you can, I think about real estate, if I had to do one thing over again, and truly, Bo, if I had to do one thing over again, I think that, 20 years ago, I would have invested in more real estate.
Hindsight,
condos were not nearly as sought out 20 years ago as they are today. Turn that into a rental income. That's really was a missed, for me personally, I think a missed opportunity.
The rental income thing is a good point. I mean, when my wife and I discussed it, we didn't want the hassle of an income property, just because you get the rest of your life.
Right.
But if you can handle that kind of thing, I mean, Sean Cooper, for example.
Oh, exactly.
Right? Sean's been on the podcast, and
he's the king of it.
Sean, buy the house and live in the basement.
Yeah, exactly. It still lives in the basement.
We should all hope to have that kind of goal-setting ability and goal achievement, right? Because it's like, why is it such a shame for some people to live in the basement? You own the house.
You own the house.
If you want to feel proud of something, be proud of that.
Exactly.
You got the house. You don't need to live in this big house.
I think it speaks to another issue that really we don't see enough of today is sacrifice.
Yeah.
You have to, if you're going to get anywhere, sacrifice, we're not just talking about, living in the basement. We're talking about not going out for dinner. We're talking about not ordering food in. We're talking about perhaps, not buying the latest and greatest brand new whatever out there and having a junker car. And all those things that people need to do to sacrifice for a longer term gain, which would be perhaps being mortgage free or having some type of investment or even being able to own a home and to put money aside for retirement and those other things. And I worry about people today. I don't think that the millennials, for example, understand that type of sacrifice to a certain degree because they some degree, and I blame myself even because I have two children who are 22 and 20. There's the helicopter parents that are really putting little cushions around them. And
taking care of them.
Yes.
So they don't get hurt.
Exactly.
You want to protect your kids, but
they
you're
need
right.
to get banged up a bit.
So somebody comes in here and they say, well, I'm not good with money. I'm sure you hear that all the time. It's not true. It's something else, right? No one's not good with money. It's something else.
It's something else is making them think they're not good with money.
Yeah, exactly. But they got into trouble and they're like, and you say, well, you got to do this and this and that. And they're thinking in their head, I don't want to change my life though. I don't want to, I can't stop buying my things, or I can't not go out to dinner and learn how to cook myself. It's like they want one thing, but they're not going to. They're not
willing to
change.
make that sacrifice. And quite honestly, again, it's habit.
This is common. This is a common,
very common
thing.
Very common. But you know what they say? What, it takes 21 days to break a habit?
Sure.
Okay, so you take 21 days of your life.
Yeah.
It's not that long. And see if you could make some changes within those 21 days. It may be, okay, maybe no. Instead of going out for dinner 3 times a week, maybe it's only going out for dinner 1 time a week. You start. And then you see, okay, maybe once every 2 weeks. And see where you get. Because if you can change that habit and you get into these new habits, you know what? I'm really not a bad cook.
Yeah.
You know what? Taking public transit to work is actually kind of nice.
I learned how to make my own Tim Hortons breakfast wraps.
Perfect.
I make them at home now. Yeah. Because it used to be the ritual to walking to work. I would just pick it up on the way.
Exactly.
And because I was working full-time 9 to 5, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
But now I'm working at home, And I took a huge pay cut, to start working for myself. Well, now I have some more time.
Yeah,
and
there's
I
no
can
excuse,
figure
right?
this out. There's no excuse. And I'm not walking. I'm not going to go out in the morning, do Tim Hortons, and come back home. That seems like a bit of a waste to me, right? Just for something that maybe I don't even need.
Exactly.
But change is not something that people like.
hate change.
They hate it so much.
Human beings inherently hate change.
Yeah.
We do. We hate it. We love
Where
habit.
does that come
and then
from?
we're bored with habit, but we love habit. It's crazy. It's comfort. What it is, change is comfort. It's what you know. And I always think of a book, and I know this is off track, but it's called, it's about Ivan Ivanikov, and it was a story about this in Siberia, this man had been sent to prison in Siberia for 20 years for, I don't know, something he did, and he was the soup kitchen guy. And when his 20 years were done, he was an old man, and he didn't want to leave. He actually ended up staying and living and working in Siberia at the prison because it's what he knew.
He adapted.
He couldn't imagine making any change. So it's amazing what people will do and how they will get stuck in a rut and in a very difficult situation financially, emotionally, physically because of not wanting to change.
I think, this is a necessity for me to embrace change. I think I had to because insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? And here I was like gambling all the time and not investigating necessarily, I guess, deeply enough why, and nothing was changing.
Exactly.
And so at a certain point, I was just like, I got to change, like whatever it is. Let's just go and start changing everything, and we'll try to figure out, if you change everything, then eventually you get to the thing like, oh, wow, that for me it was attention deficit disorder.
Right.
I found that out, right? So that, and then you realize, I can change that with medication, and now everything can change.
And it's amazing.
Open the doors.
Amazing how much better your life has become.
My God.
It's like night and day, isn't it?
It is. And then now you know that change is okay.
Change is not bad.
Change is not bad.
Yes.
And that we survive. I think if you don't go through anything early in life or even, partway through life, you don't know that you're going to be okay on the other side.
Right.
And if you fail, that's okay because that's lessons learned.
Exactly.
And you're right, the safety zone.
Yeah, so we're coming back to this group of young people that have been somewhat sheltered. And I get a call from my daughter every now and again. She's at university and she'll be like, I can't manage this, I can't manage that. I'm like, you can and you will. And you need to do it. You need to go through this because if you don't, then you're protecting yourself, you're being protected, and you're not going to grow.
It's the fear, right? I had to face a lot of fears, and that helped. Going away, going on a trip. We did a month in Peru. I had to face some fears there. Fears of falling off cliffs and in a bus, but that's another part of the story. But yeah, if you learn, you just do it. Somebody says you just have to do that. Well, then you find whatever's inside of you to do it, right? Now, of course, if you're having any mental health issues, maybe you don't have that thing inside of you, and that's where you break. But then you can go and try to figure out what that is.
Right. And so at Credit Canada, what we try to do is we try to take a holistic approach. So if someone comes in to see us and they've identified that they have some mental health issues or there's some other issues going on in their life, we try to give them the third-party intervention with other partners that we have so that they can actually address those issues along with their financial issues. Because let's face it, like you say, you needed to address quite a significant medical issue.
I couldn't do anything without that.
No, you couldn't do anything without that. And then everything else kind of fell into place. And I think that so many people need to look at what the underlying causes of their financial issues are, because there often are underlying causes. It may on the surface appear to be mismanagement. And why we call it mismanagement is because their income states that they should be managing okay and they shouldn't have found themselves in this type of financial situation. But the truth of the matter is there's something going on in their life that has resulted in them in getting themselves into this situation. Yeah.
Do you find that some of your competitors, or I won't say competitors, but other people in this, in the debt management, debt consolidation, sort of debt recovery business, are they just saying, roll all your debt into this line of credit at a lower rate and then see you later? Does that happen? Is everyone kind of playing along here, or are there bad places people can go for this kind of advice?
Well, there are some for-profit places that are kind of scary and that are promising the world that they're not delivering anything. So we know that. I mean, the area industry has that kind of thing going on. And one of the things that I think is the cornerstone to Credit Canada is we've actually just celebrated our 52nd year.
That's crazy.
It's
I
crazy
didn't
long,
even have an
right?
idea.
So we've almost we're around about as long as Tim Hortons kind of thing.
Sure.
So, we've been around for a long time. And I look back at the minutes from the first board of directors meetings back in 1960s,
you have to keep
right?
them, or,
Yeah.
Wow.
We just kept them out of nostalgia.
Sure.
And it was all about money management, about family budgeting, about understanding the full cost of living and those types of things. It wasn't just it wasn't pie in the sky stuff. It was very grassroots.
Yeah.
And we've continued to work that through our organization since way back then to understand that it's about budgeting. It's about counseling. It's about understanding what happens to families through marital breakup, through job loss, through health issues, through issues of addiction, through issues with, to help out their children, et cetera, and what the implications of those are over time with their financial situation.
Yeah.
So that has been our cornerstone. Other organizations may approach it differently. We know that the bank, for example, will say, roll everything into a line of credit and here's your credit cards back, but you don't owe anything on them. Go have fun.
Oh,
and so what happens?
So
they end up with a line of
dangerous.
credit and a bunch of credit card debt again. Yeah.
With the mortgage consolidation, I mean, it's a great thing to wipe out your credit card balance and, of course, roll it into something at 2 or 3 or 4% or whatever. But only if there's a plan.
Yes,
and
exactly.
that's what you guys
don't
are there for.
Don't feel rich all of a sudden, because people do. They think, oh man, I only have to pay this line of credit now on top of my mortgage, and I feel rich. And you know what? Let's go on a holiday. We got our credit cards. There's nothing on them. And next thing you know, they come and see us. And
I'm full of rage right now.
Yeah, I know. I get so frustrated. And the thing about it is we are going to be seeing a full generation of people that'll never pay off their mortgages because of this.
Oh man.
Just keep borrowing against the equity in their home.
Like what would be wrong if the bank said, okay, yeah, so you want to have, here, go see Credit Canada. Like, do you have any relationship with some banks?
We do. Some banks do send them to us. But
they're not going to make money.
No, they're not making any money because
money.
we ask the creditors to stop interest.
I'm still being fooled in my head.
Yeah,
even though I know the truth.
You know the truth.
I'm still, this innate knowledge that I
Yeah.
learned when I was younger that banks are there for me.
I know, because they're the cornerstone of our industry, of the business world, really. But the truth of the matter is, banks don't make money off of our clients because they donate to our agency, and we actually ask the creditors to stop interest.
Yeah.
So that, if you talk
That's
about,
right.
we talked
Or
about
my
your
proposal,
debt. The $1,000 that you were paying towards your creditors, $800 of interest. Can you imagine that $800 was gone?
Now, you maybe you can clarify this. I was told at the time that CIBC, because they were part of my proposal, like the big one, they were the
Right, yes.
they probably was 15,000 out of the 40. Even though it's cleared from my credit, they probably still have a black note on my file.
Well, the creditors can carry your information as long as they want.
Yeah, so
right?
I'll probably never be able to get any credit from them.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, we've certainly seen it happen over and over again. The longer you distance yourself from that time period,
that was then.
This is
good.
now, and I always call certain customers as the last frontier, and they want to get the last frontier.
Yeah.
You may have been a risk at some point, but they'll see you not necessarily as a risk as time goes on.
So they do have the belief that people can change.
They do have the belief that people can change. I mean, we have to think about, the way I like to think about the banks is that they could, if we're smart about it, we can get their products for very little. It allows us to have growth, financial growth in our lives. But we have to understand they're in business to look out for themselves. Because they have shareholders.
Yeah.
And their shareholders put a lot of pressure on them.
I'm one of them.
You're one of them. You want better returns.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it
so
really is.
Unfortunately, it's every man for himself.
So
when you think about it, we need to educate people. That's why I believe the cornerstone of this organization, Credit Canada, is education. Because if you think we're going to change the banks, we're not. It doesn't matter if you're a shareholder or not. Okay, well, you're not bringing down the bank. You're not bringing down the customers by being a shareholder. But we need to educate consumers because the banks are not going to change. They have a business model for a reason.
But I do have the right to vote
You have a right to vote.
I get
as a shareholder.
Yeah, so they send me the things, and the things that they recommend, I usually vote against those things because it's the
on
things
record anyway.
Like, well, on record, and my vote, I don't know, maybe if a lot of people did it, but there's minority shareholders that can propose certain things like lower salaries for executives, or disclosure or of certain things, or more social endeavors,
more social responsibility,
and those make it to the docket, and then I see them and I'm like, let's do that. And the board recommends against it. Of course,
of course they do.
Right?
I mean, and you know, it's interesting that the CEOs do make as much as they do, considering the public outcry, because there has been a lot, and the media attention that it's gotten.
Yeah. Now you're a CEO, right? This is a not-for-profit.
We're a charity.
Right? You're actually a registered charity, not just
charity.
NFP. So that's always been that way for the 50.
Yeah, for 52 years.
52 years.
We have been a charity, and so no, I don't make as much as the CEO.
But people can. So what I remember about the last charity I looked up was City Kids in Hamilton, because we did a podcast in December around the gift giving sort of time. You know, you can look up any charity's books, and the salary section has how many people fit into certain categories.
Yes, exactly.
So likely, depending on how many executives you guys have, you can probably figure out the range of your salary by looking it up on a list. It's probably in a certain range, right? Yeah. And so there's virtually full disclosure of everything that goes
just like
on
the Sunshine List.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You can see those explicitly
exactly.
with the names even, right? Running as a charity, so are you investing? What do you invest any additional? You get donations.
So we get donations.
Some of the banks donate, you said, or no?
The banks are major donors, so that's a good thing. And what we do is that if we have a small surplus, it'll go into reserve, and that reserve will be used to invest back into the organization.
Yeah.
If we keep it going, exactly. And our biggest investment, in my opinion, is education. I mean, we do a lot of work with a number of organizations across the city and across the country on issues along with financial literacy. So we run Credit Education Week, which has been a really big event held every November.
November, okay, so during Financial Literacy Month.
During Financial Literacy Month.
Was it always Financial Literacy Month?
No,
did you start
it wasn't. We started it. I swear to God we did.
Did you? Yeah.
Well, let me just say that.
I can't
say we started it, but I will say that Credit Education Week, we're in our 12th year.
Yeah.
And for the first 3 or 4 years, we were running along quite well with our Credit Education Week. It was a national event. And then we worked with a group called the Financial Literacy Action Group. And through the Financial Literacy Action Group, we started Financial Literacy Month.
Amazing.
And then the Financial Consumer
Agency... Is the FCAC part of that too?
Yeah, well, the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada came and said, we'll make this an event, a national event.
Excellent.
And a government-recognized event. So that's what happened. And so Credit Education Week still falls within Financial Literacy Month. And I will tell you, it's one of the biggest events across the country during Financial Literacy Month.
Excellent. I just had Jane Rooney on 20th episode.
Oh, great. Yes.
So she's fantastic.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
The nicest person.
Lots of great work they're doing.
Yeah, it was leading up to the conference that I saw you at. And,
right.
And they said, we don't have anyone from the FCAC that can speak at the conference, but we'll give you a half an hour with Jane Rooney on the phone. And I'm like, so I learned about that we have a financial literacy leader in Canada, and that she has this amazing mandate. And there was a board. Were you on a board?
I was on the Financial Literacy Task Force.
You were on the task force.
And I was also on the steering committee. So the Financial Literacy Task Force, one of our recommendations was to have a financial literacy leader. So
that's great.
What makes me very pleased is the fact that a lot of our recommendations were taken quite seriously and have been put into place.
That's so good. And she spent a whole year, or maybe that was in 2013 or whatever, just going around the country.
Yes.
And
and
then you guys would just sort of collaborate on as the task force.
As the task force before she was even appointed. The task force actually spent a good 2 years going around the country, getting input from all corners of Canada, developing a number of recommendations, and there were quite a few. And then the FCAC took those recommendations, the government took those recommendations. It fell under the FCAC, Jane Rooney was appointed, and then Jane Rooney had a financial steering committee, which I was on as well.
Okay, great.
And through that, we developed some actionable plans.
That's awesome. And it's all, there's a couple of things that I try to talk about all the time. One is the democratization of personal finance, and the second one is financial literacy, just on an overall basis. But, financial literacy for kids, financial literacy for everybody, right?
And for even old people. When I say even old people, because I hate to say it, our growing segment of our clientele is elderly individuals.
I'm hearing something about financial empowerment as a separate sort of thing, where there's a group of people or organization, I believe, who tries to help the elderly population take advantage of all of the services that are available to them, and so because they might not know,
and you know what,
you
no
got
one's going to tell
credit
them.
or something. No one's going to
It's
tell
like
them.
the guaranteed income supplement.
Yeah,
no one is not telling you
and
about
you have
that
to
if you
apply
qualify.
for GIS or
yes, exactly. So there's we see so many elderly people in here that have left their jobs or have been forced out of work, and they can't manage on the pension that they have, and they can't get back into the workforce, and it's really quite scary.
And would you sit down with them and say, hey, GIS is there, and you can,
absolutely.
You can
we will
get
look
that.
We'll look at all of their current benefits and see what they're getting and what they're not getting, and see whether they qualify for anything. So we definitely do that. We definitely try to see what other resources are out there in the community, because there's a lot of great community organizations working with seniors. We worry about things like payday lending and those types of situations where people are senior, and because they have their CPP, suddenly they qualify for a payday loan. And
CPP check?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, no,
I will tell you from the stories we hear here, that it's a disaster.
That sounds like a disaster to me.
Yeah.
But there's no way that's ever going to change.
No.
If you're going to get a payday loan based on your equally distributed check, right?
Exactly. How do you ever get out of that?
What's going to change?
Nothing. You'll never get out of it. Once you get, so we've seen stories where seniors have lost their rent, their apartment because of getting into the payday loan cycle.
And I'm sure these are some of the rules or the things that you guys would have talked about. Let's put some actual laws in place.
Well, we've been very aggressive with the provincial government about what we believe payday loans should be able to and not able to do. But you're fighting a giant here. Payday lending in Ontario is huge. Some of the rules have been tightened slightly, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
I think, are they bringing down the cost per $100 over
Well, it's
years?
for every $100, it's $21.
And is that going down to 18?
It's supposed to. Nothing's been
passed.
Nothing's been passed.
I see. Okay.
There's still a lot of talk, and right now, I think that because we're coming into an election, we'll have to see what happens after that.
Oh, yeah. Ontario.
Yes.
Oh, no. We could have a whole nother podcast about that. But, okay, well, I'm really glad that I came here, and I wanted you to come on the podcast because I wrote down a note while you were speaking at the conference in February that, it says like really passionate about debt. Right?
I am. I'm very passionate about debt. I mean, I am because I really truly believe individuals do themselves a huge disservice by saying they're bad with money, by saying they don't understand how to manage money, that they don't understand finance, they don't understand investing, they don't understand how debt works. And I believe each and every one of us has it within ourselves to be their own money managers and be successful financially, whether they're making a very minimal income or a large income. Because believe it or not, Bo, we see people that are doctors and lawyers in here.
Yeah,
and we see people on social assistance. And I can tell you some of the people on social assistance are better at budgeting and better at managing the money than the doctors and lawyers. So I know it has nothing to do with income level. It has something to do with how you perceive money and how you allow yourself to manage it.
Isn't that funny? Everybody probably thinks, if I only made a little bit more.
That's what everybody thinks. That is the number one. You ask them, what is the biggest financial problem? They'll say, I'm just not making enough.
Whatever's causing you the basic concept of spending more than you make.
You'll just spend more if you make more.
You're just going to keep doing it. There's a reason why. And so let's tackle the reason with your associated, with your partners.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get off the treadmill.
Yeah.
Whatever that treadmill is for you.
Yeah.
Step back, reevaluate, and then make decisions.
The psychology, it really is about that, isn't it? It's just like...
Always.
It's hardly about money when you think about it. Money just happens to be the thing that we all need to have to exchange for goods, but it's really...
And let's face it, there are terribly sad stories out there that we hear people can't make their rent payment and they really have fallen into some very hard times. I'm not talking about them. And sometimes people are somewhat offended by me saying, It's not just the money. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think you're doing yourself any favors by thinking it is just the money.
That's right. Because
you're not.
You're just blaming something else.
Then you're taking the control away from yourself.
There's nothing you can do now.
Exactly.
Right? There's
it's out of your hands. You can't control any of it.
I've had the thoughts. I'm never going to get out of this.
Yes.
Because the money has to fix itself.
That's a very dangerous thought. And so what I'm saying is take back the control yourself. Yeah. And by doing so, you can make the changes necessary.
And it's not going to be overnight, and don't expect it to be.
No,
but
a lot of people want it to be overnight. We've been told this in our fast-moving society that everything has to happen now or yesterday.
Just think about if you really want your life to change. CreditCanada.com. I'm looking at the posters, the great posters, the stuff that I've seen in the subway ads, or even probably billboards at one point or another, right? So CreditCanada.com. Now, and anybody can just, they just go there, they can call you, they can come in.
They go online, they can call us, they can come in, and our counseling's all free.
Yep.
And we will do a budget, help you look at financial goals, help you deal with debt. All by our certified counselors.
You don't have to be in dire straits.
You don't have to be in dire
straits.
Please,
just
in fact, it's better if you're not, because then you're coming
in
before
curious.
It's too late.
Just think maybe one day I might have trouble with money, and then get
am I on the right track?
Education.
I think I'm doing everything
That's
right, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because there are stories about people who just, dump everything in RSPs and then you can take it out to pay for your house.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And then, what do you mean I can only take out $25,000?
And what do you mean? I got to pay it all back. And
I have to pay that back?
Yeah,
so it's like, if you're confused about anything, don't just hold it in and say, well, I can't ask because I'm going to look stupid.
Yeah, some people just even want to know whether their budget makes sense compared to other people's budgets.
That's right.
Because you really don't know.
So you're open to any of that.
Absolutely.
You don't have to have a certain amount of money or not money or debt.
Doesn't matter your income. It doesn't matter your debt.
Everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome.
And that holds true for other organizations like yours in the
charities,
province, and charities, and anything like that. And just look at a bunch of different options. If somebody says debt consolidation and money up front, don't go there.
Run as fast as you can.
Or anything that involves you.
Anything that you feel pressured, or if they want to help you make a decision or come to a solution very quickly in the conversation. Anything where they're asking for money up front. Anything where they're making outlandish promises, such as they're going to repair your credit. You should always run from those. Those are not helpful organizations. If it sounds too good to be true, it's not true.
Okay.
As simple as that.
Yeah, it is that simple. If you are involved with somebody like that, come to Credit Canada for a second opinion.
Because we've often give second opinions.
That's right.
In these situations.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for having me here, Laurie, and hopefully we get to talk again or work together or see each other at a conference or something.
That'd be great, and thank you so much for coming in.
If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It would mean a lot to me, and it only takes a few seconds. For the show notes and any links from the episode, head over to my website, investwisely.ca. And while you're there, please feel free to send me a message on my contact page. Thanks so much for listening to The Personal Finance Show. I'll be back next week with Raj Lala, President and CEO of Evolve ETFs.